Okay, well, since Randy is not officially um, a member yet, because he has to be appointed by the Plan Commission first, that means we have a total of six members, and I'm counting four of us are here with their videos on, so we should be good to go. Do you agree, Abby?
Yes.
Okay, great. Then let's get started. Welcome, everyone. Let's just do a really quick introduction. We'll have to do this again next time when we have Jen and Kelly on as well. I'll start. I'm Lisa Hanairo. I'm the Alder for District 6 and affordable. I've been on workforce housing for the past year or more and on the Plan Commission for 2 years. And I am making it my mission to come up, help the city move forward on affordable housing and use our TID extension. So that's one of my goals for myself as an alderperson for this year. Let's go to Quinn next.
Nice to meet you virtually, Lisa. My name is Quinn Wakely. I've been on CDA for I don't even know how long, a couple years maybe, as long as I've lived in Middleton. And yeah, I'm just a citizen member, looking to help out my local community. I went to the La Follette School at UW for public affairs for a master's degree. So I'm very interested in local governance and all of that. But I work for the Department of Corrections, otherwise.
Okay,
And
great. Thank you
yeah.
for being here. We'll go to Jeremy and then Ben.
Hey everyone, I'm Jeremy. I am in the Workforce Housing Committee. I've been on there since a little under a year now. I've been in Middleton since mid 2023. I work remotely as an editor for a business magazine about truck management, and I'm just a couple blocks north of downtown.
Great. Welcome. And Ben?
Hey, Ben Roden. I think we've been in the community for 4 years now. Okay, you have to go back and check. And been in Middleton about 18 years. Don't work directly in the workforce housing space, but was there's one of the committees that was open a few years ago and looking for people and looked like an intriguing one. And certainly with this opportunity with the funding, obviously a great opportunity for us to make an impact here. But professionally, I work at Exact Sciences.
Great. All right. I should mention I used to work in the radioactive waste transportation and the Great Lakes policy spaces. And then I retired during the pandemic, like so many people in their mid to late 50s who had decided, you know what, maybe it's time. Maybe this is a sign. And so now I devote my time to council stuff, and that's all good. And Jeremy, I hate to say this, but technically we all have to have our video on in order to have a quorum. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I had to go answer something. They're about to show our apartment for some other people.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, if you do need to drop off, just let us know and we'll know you're coming back.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so the next item, or our first actual agenda item, since we don't have minutes to approve, is the discussion of the chair and vice chair. I wonder if we want to wait until next time to do that, since we're missing two of the people, possibly three people. Anybody really
I'd agree with that.
hankering to be the chair? Otherwise, I think without objection, we'll defer that discussion item until our next meeting. Determination of meeting time, that's another item that probably should have input from our colleagues. But at the very least, we should be able to identify a few potential dates for a regularly scheduled meeting, if that's what we want, or at the very least, our next scheduled meeting. If we were to do this every month at the same time, does this time work for people? Is there a better option? Abby, you're a staff person. I know the Plan Commission meets at 7 o'clock on the second Tuesday of the month. So, and the fourth Tuesday.
Yeah, this time works great for me, and it works for me next month. If we go any later than the 10th, it would be more difficult. So I would love if we kept for next month, June 10th at 4.
Okay. Anybody have a conflict? I probably should check my own. And Abby, the members who aren't here today, It's not because they had a conflict, correct? For the
Correct.
regular.
No, one was a vacation and the other I expected to be here. So I'm not sure. Maybe something came up at work for Kelly.
Okay, all right, that's fine. Yeah, and the 10th, I have a shift at the food pantry, but I can always duck out early in order to get back by 4 o'clock. So let's tentatively plan on meeting. Larry, I don't know if you can hear my dogs barking. I have two West Highland White Terriers, and they like egg each other on. Anyway, we'll meet at this same time on June 10th. Unless something comes up and our colleagues can't make it. Ben, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to reaffirm that. Happy to keep this time, but it's this no things coming up for work at 4 p.m. are always potential, and those will often have to take precedent. So yeah.
Totally understand. And maybe when we get the whole group together, next time, ideally, we'll be able to find a time that is less likely to generate, those last minute interruptions. As someone who is retired but really busy with stuff, I totally feel like it's my obligation to just do whatever works for everybody else, because I remember what it used to be like when you're working and you just really can't miss anything. So I totally get it. Okay, well, let's talk about what we're really here for, which is the strategy and finance goals. So in our packet, you'll see we just put down a few sentences about what our strategy and finance subcommittee goals are. We're going to develop. So, can you hear my dogs? Please say no.
Nope.
Good.
Not at all.
And now I can. I could that one
Okay.
time. Now I'm listening
Yeah.
for them.
They're
Right.
like dueling banjos downstairs. Okay. So we're going to develop the approach for investing in buying, building, refurbishing, and or financing, along with specific recommendations for what those components will involve. And then we're also going to try to identify funding sources that can supplement our TID funding. And I think we've talked before about, I think the latest estimate for what the final year of increment will be is $11 million. And we can use we have to use at least 75% of that for affordable housing. And the Workforce Housing Committee had previously said we kind of would like to use 100%. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. Anything related to education and outreach. And, I was reading through the More Housing Wisconsin papers done by the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, and they have a lot of items on there about reaching out to developers and to employers, all good things. That is something that we don't have to worry about on the subcommittee. We're going to let our colleagues on the education and outreach subcommittee handle anything related to education. If we come up and outreach, if we come up with a suggestion, we can jot it down and pass it on to them so that they've got it. And I hope they will do the same for us. Abby, I know you and Daphne are coordinating on that. I see this as our opportunity to take what other municipalities have done and pick what we think would work for us. Maybe innovate a little bit if we have reasons to do so and ideas for doing so. We have a lot of, we're blazing the trail for Middleton to do this type of, actual plan to implement and spend money to bring more housing or make it easier to build affordable housing in Middleton, but we're not blazing the trail among municipalities. There are a lot of others who have done this. And so we do have a lot of good resources. I think closest to home would be probably Sun Prairie. They're a little more similar to us than, say, Madison, just given the size. Abby was telling me. Tell us about Madison's Community Development Authority, Abby.
Oh, I mean, they're doing amazing work in Madison. They're in the process right now of redeveloping I think they call it the Triangle site. And our staff team has been out there a couple times to tour it on different conference sessions that they've had, and they are converting around, please don't quote me on these numbers, but it's around 300 affordable units to about 1,200 right now. So they're in the process of doing a phased redevelopment. They own and manage all of their units. They have, I believe, about a couple dozen staff team members that are involved. But yeah, I mean, they've been kind of doing this work quite a bit longer than we have as far as like actually getting involved with development. So I've worked with the city of Middleton for 18 years, so I'm pretty familiar with the ways that we've incentivized affordable housing over that time through initially a down payment assistance loan program, through TID incentives, through a grant that we recently received. And one of the things that I just want to be involved with going forward is for any opportunities where we as the city would end up owning property, that is going to result in additional needs for staff resources. So it's just something to be cognizant of. We have done loans previously, and we were able to do that with our own internal staff with some outside support from a nonprofit agency. But I still think that there are a lot of best practices that we can learn from Madison, even though they're quite a bit larger than we are.
Yep, thank you for that background, and I agree. Yeah, whatever they're doing that we can do as well. I know they've done some things in their zoning code that we've done too. For instance, making it possible for accessory dwelling units to be built in single family, well, actually in all residential districts, I believe. That's something great, and Madison does it, and so do we. I was reading today in these More Housing Wisconsin papers about how some communities, I don't think they cited any, but one suggestion is to actually develop a plan for an ADU that would meet the city's standards and have that ready to roll for anybody who's like, hey, I would like to build an ADU. And that, really reduces the barrier for that homeowner or property owner, if they already have something that they know will fly through the review process. The review process is something else that it's recommended we look at. How is, and this is, again, this is one of those things, it would be good to do as a city for all development. And it's not something that this subcommittee or even our two subcommittees working together should do. It's a future activity to add to the planning department's long list of things to do. But it would be beneficial to figure out where, how long does it take to get through our review process? Are there things we can streamline, like not requiring everything to go before 4 committees? Could we figure out a way to just have like one meeting where committee representatives show up at the plan commission meeting when that property or that proposal is being considered? So those internal organizational things, I think, are worth pursuing as a recommendation from this committee, but not something that we need to be writing up in our affordable housing action plan. Another one that occurred to me is the idea of, these are like thinking differently about how you bring housing in. We charge fees for various impacts like parks, we charge a fee of new developments. And Abby, we do have something in our zoning code that may reduce or eliminate the fee for affordable housing for parks specifically. Do we not? I remember having a discussion about wanting to make it clear that we're not suggesting that people who live in affordable housing buildings don't deserve or need parks, but we wanted to make it more affordable for the developer.
We have not done a waiver specific to parks. We do have an impact fee waiver related to what we previously had 3 public safety impact fees, and we've now phased them phased out 2 of the 3. So I believe we're only charging 1 impact fee at this point. I can get that information to you. The impact fees for public safety are quite a bit lower than the park fees.
Okay.
So we have not included anything in the ordinance to waive park fees. There was a study that was conducted with Baker Tilly along with our Parks Department to pretty drastically increase the park fees. That was taken forward to the council, and I know it was reviewed at that point in time by the Workforce Housing Committee, and there were recommendations in there related to either a full exemption or a partial exemption of those fees, and that stalled out at this point. The council reviewed it. There were some members that expressed concern, and it hasn't been back on the council agenda. We have way in the past, we have exempted some specific properties from the park fees. One example that I can recall is the Elmwood on, I think it's called the Elmwood Senior Housing on Elmwood Avenue. There was an agreement with that developer and owner to exempt them from park fees for purposes of creating affordable units, but it's been on a case-by-case basis and there's nothing written into code.
Okay.
Abby, is that report that you mentioned something you would be able to share? The Baker Tilly and other partners that put that
Yes.
together?
Yeah, I can follow up with their draft. And then I think I also have the PowerPoint presentation that was given to the council. And that was probably, and Lisa will maybe remember too, I think that that was probably more than a year ago now that that was before the council and hasn't yet been back before them.
Right, it was, because I remember it was after Mayor Kuhn was elected, because I moved it to the other side of the table after she
Okay.
was elected. And I want to say it was some amount like $13,000 would have been, that wouldn't have been the increase, but it would have added $13,000 to the cost of a home. To increase our park fees as they recommended, which doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. It just means that at the time council was just starting to pay attention to the issue of affordable housing or housing unaffordability. And we didn't have the stomach to go forward with that at the time. But for example, something like the fee we have now, or if it increases, could we use our TIF money or our TID extension money to compensate the city for the fee that we would waive from the developer having to pay? So there are different ways to think about in the context of our, buy, build, finance, and refurbish. There are different ways to think about how to use our TID extension money.
Yep, and just really quickly, I was going to show for every project, we calculate the fees using this spreadsheet. And I have to correct what I said about public safety because we have phased all 3 of those out. They're no longer required.
Okay.
We fully recouped the costs associated with new construction for those. But just to give you an example, we charge park fees in lieu, and it's $1,700 for smaller units, $2,900 for larger. And then we also charge in addition park improvement fees, which are right now $750 for smaller units and $1,250 for larger units. So you can see this development, this is an apartment project that's going in on University Avenue. It's 133 units. They're paying 372,000 in park fees, just to give you an idea of what those costs are currently.
Yeah. So even waiving part of it, 50% of it could be significant. Ben, go ahead.
So how long do we have the EMS or emergency fees in place, Abby? Is that for several years, I imagine?
Though those buildings, EMS and fire, were built in, I believe, 2007. Police came later. I believe that was around 2010. And there's a study done by the city to determine what growth is going to happen and what percentage of those capital costs can be attributed to the new growth,
Gotcha.
so that the current taxpayers are continuing to pay their tax bill to cover those capital costs. But then in addition, any new housing units that are built are helping to pay their fair share. But those now are they're fully recouped. So we are not currently charging a fee for those.
Okay. And how recently were they discontinued?
Well, so whichever one was the last one phased out really recently because I hadn't even remembered that we had phased it out. So it's just been, I would say, it's fully been phased out just in the last, I don't know, 6 months or so. I can get that information to
I
you.
just get a perspective of, perspective of it, um, that their savings has been, there's a savings for developers now they didn't have a couple years ago, right? That, there's perhaps some space within that savings, right, to, that we can utilize. Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Quinn?
Sorry, I had trouble unmuting. Abby, I'm curious if this would be something that already exists and that you could provide, but kind of a holistic, like the full process of the developer goes through when it wants to develop in the city of Middleton. Like if there is any kind of materials that you've already produced that you give to developers, um, that kind of give us step by step, just so that we're seeing the whole process. And maybe this is to Lisa's point earlier on that, that might be a little bit outside of what we're thinking about, and that's other. But that, and also just any fees, taxes that the city is typically imposing, if there isn't anything outside the impact fees. I'd just be curious to kind of get that holistic picture of, what is a developer looking at when they want to develop in the city, and where can we, kind of along the lines of what Lisa is kind of talking about, maybe provide a subsidy, maybe provide a way to ease the process.
Mhm.
But just to get that full picture so we know what we're talking about.
Yes, so we have flowcharts that have been created and not yet published on our website. So Lisa hasn't even seen these yet. That outline the basic steps for getting different aspects of our process approved. It's a little bit more complicated because like a subdivision is going to have different steps than, building a multifamily building that already has permissive zoning in place. But I think what we could give you that might kind of give you the flavor of it would be not only the flow charts that are showing the different aspects of the development process, we can give you the fee schedule, but it might be good to give you a couple of example projects. Smart Growth Madison did a study recently where they looked at how long it takes to get a project approved in various communities. And we actually scored pretty poorly in that as far as like the length of time involved. But we only had 5 projects that were being considered. And so to me, like we just had the Pheasant Crossing subdivision approved in what I think is a very short timeline for, an entire subdivision on farmland that had to be annexed into the city. Urban services had to be extended. We had to develop a city developer agreement. The land had to be zoned, subdivided. Um, but there may be a project where we have a development and the developer is asking for things that are way outside the norm. So let's say they're asking for assistance that is not aligned with the city's policies or much different than anything we've ever approved. That is going to be a slower process because it doesn't fit within the mold of what we typically would do. And so a project like that is going to, when you're averaging, it's going to lengthen out the time frame and make it look like we're really slow, but it's actually like this project had these complicating factors. So maybe giving you a couple of example projects too, and like what kinds of fees they incurred, and then how long it took from the time that they first gave something for review to the time that they were able to get a building permit. Like that's kind of what we're, I think, looking for.
That would be awesome. Thank you. And I don't know if you you would include the Smart Growth Madison study. That would be cool to see
Yes.
as well.
Yes, I will do that.
That would be good. Yeah, I would like to see that too. And that, I'm wondering if this is something, Abby, can the Plan Commission just take this up and start? I know we always have a lot to do, but this seems to be as worthy a project as our zoning code update. I mean, it's a companion to our zoning code update to figure out the processes we follow. Is there any way to streamline them with the exception of the examples, the hypothetical example that you mentioned, where developers are asking for things we can't really do or don't do as a policy. Can we streamline the process even more to make us more attractive as a community to develop in? Although it hasn't stopped anybody from developing here because we have such great schools. Yeah, because if we could get the Plan Commission to sort of over the next year take up the cause of streamlining processes and looking into all these things that get in the way of development or make it take longer and therefore more costly, that would be great. And then again, our subcommittee wouldn't have to spend so much time on it.
Okay.
I am excited about the, when Quinn was talking, it made me think about the Smart Growth Madison workshop on the 30th, which is going to be walking through, even before it gets to us, what goes through, what happens in the development process. So we'll be able to report back on that at the next meeting. Getting back to, what this subcommittee is going to do, I think what I would recommend, is first of all that everybody read through those More Housing Wisconsin 12 papers that Daphne has posted on the housing education page. They do have a lot of things that we're doing. In fact, Abby, I was going to ask you, paper number 1 is the housing ready checklist. And we have a version that Daphne had done. She had filled it out for Middleton. And I don't know if that's the one that's posted on the website, but that would be good to share with everybody because I was very pleased to see how many of the things in the housing ready checklist we're already doing. Because that means we can focus on the things we aren't yet doing. And I know one of the things in paper number 2, which is the first steps to housing solutions, they talk about, updating the comprehensive plan housing element, which we've done. And also doing a housing needs assessment, which I believe Daphne has done, but I don't know how recently. And then the last one was the required annual update on the housing affordability report. And I don't think we've done that annually, correct?
That is correct. There was a new requirement implemented by the state, and there was a penalty for communities that did not release that report in the first year. And we released the report. The penalty was that you couldn't collect the fees anymore if you didn't display it on your own separate page of your website. You had to list every fee that might be charged to a developer. And we did that in the first year, but we have not kept up with that. So that is something that I want us, now that we have an additional half-time staff position, and the person in our department he does have a background in housing and worked at Commonwealth Development for a while. So that is something that we have on the list that we need to get that affordability report updated and published on the website.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, yeah, I recognize that an annual report like that is probably a burden. But at the very least, maybe we can get the legislature to change that to, once every 2 years, but in the meantime, it'd be good to get that updated. And then I love taking ideas from other communities if they've already done the work. Why not benefit, because we share what we do with them as well. It's what government does. So I looked up the Sun Prairie's paper or their report on housing strategies, and to my dismay, but not surprise, it was like 156 pages long. And done by a consultant. And when I think about what is useful for council, for residents, and possibly even for our planning staff, I think of not 156 pages. I just feel like that's too much. It might be really good information, but we need something much, much shorter that gets right to the point. So they had their strategies on 3 pages. Looks like it's about, I don't know, less than 100. So I might share that just to give you some ideas of what another community has done. And if you want to see the full report, you can go and see all the stuff that they gathered. But like I said, I just feel like we need to keep it simple as possible, with not without detail, but very succinct, to the point. This is what we think should be done. Here are the, or the what do they divide this up into? They've got add affordable units, organizational strategies, increasing the supply of all housing, and improving quality, accessibility, and attainability of housing. So that's things like the refurbishment that we've talked about. In fact, it sounds like they might have a program similar to, or maybe this was another municipality that's doing something similar to what we're already doing, but the Energy Navigator project, where we're refurbishing naturally occurring affordable housing. So again, going back to, thinking about what is our committee trying to help do? What are we trying to do and why? Who are we doing it for? Who is our customer ultimately? And I think it's a combination of, again, as a council member, I think it's for the council that we're making the report, but ultimately what we want to do is serve current and future residents of Middleton, make sure our employers can provide, can have housing available for their employees when they're recruiting them. So I'd like to be able to articulate those in writing, and then also think about what information do we need to get where we need to go. And again, I will underscore those papers from the More Housing Wisconsin series. Those are extremely useful, and they give you a good intro, and then they also have resources. And then the last thing is what do we see as our end product? And I hope it won't be a 156 page report. Ben, I see your hand is raised.
Yep, and I think I think what you laid out there, at least in terms of kind of what our priorities are, what we're trying to achieve, who we're serving, I think it is extremely helpful. I think from there, what I typically have found very useful, again, not so much in a public setting, more a corporate setting, is to then kind of, okay, we've got a bunch of options we can do. Or I'm sure the Sun Prairie, felt like the Sun Prairie has, I don't know how many different tactics they have on there, but a lot of different options we can borrow from others. But I think it's useful, I think, then to evaluate, we don't have to overanalyze it, but evaluate them against a set of evaluation criteria. What does align to our priorities? Is it achievable? What's the degree of impact? What are the metrics we're trying to achieve? What's kind of the ROI? How we'll achieve those metrics? And kind of score those a little bit. Not that scoring makes the decisions for us, but it helps us sort of triage things, put things in buckets. So that kind of, because it gets us to okay, what are the levers we're going to focus on, right? Through this, right? So that's just that might be getting help with narrowing down the list of things we could do, right?
Yep.
Because a lot of things are going to sound good, right?
Exactly. And I love that suggestion, that methodical approach, with the scoring. It made me think of we've got that workspace in the Miro board that Daphne set up for us. And that's another good resource that I should make sure is available to everybody. And you mentioned metrics. One thing that I have not found, and maybe it's in a paper I haven't read yet, how are we going to evaluate our progress? Because it's very, coming from the world where I always had to report on progress to the feds and foundations, it's very easy to say I held X number of meetings and we trained, X hundred people and produced this report, but is it really, I would like to see some metrics showing we have put X number of people in homes, or brought so many people into, I guess, making sure the units are built is one thing, but
Right.
have we helped keep anybody in Middleton who didn't have to move because it got so unaffordable?
Yeah, I would agree. I think we teed up a couple metrics in the time we met physically in the council chambers, or there, because we talked a couple things. One is sort of the net units. The other was sort of how many units did we, or how many units did we save, our kind of our can't remember exactly what, but keeping people in units as well. So I think having a couple metrics like that, I don't, often if you think as we think through them, if we think about sort of, okay, what are some outcome metrics? There are some kind of leading indicators that we can look at to that sort of, okay, are we on track to that? Like, how many development proposals have been submitted or something like that, that sort of kind of help us kind of track the progress towards those outcomes. But I do agree, again, going back to kind of that methodical approach, I think, I think that would, I agree, kind of set that, don't have the answers for it, but I agree with, we set something like that up.
Yeah. The metrics also made me think of another, maybe not, I don't want to say outside the box, but a different way of thinking of how to ensure Middleton housing is affordable. I mentioned I volunteer at Way Forward Resources, and they have, I just did a tour with a new alder person whose district includes Way Forward. And they've got metrics to show how their housing programs it's like a case management program that takes people through over the course of the year to try to bring stability into their housing situation, so that they can do this on their own, going forward. And I'm sure we could get metrics on how that program works, because I could see that being a part of a menu of items that we would consider, if we were to invest in that program just for Middleton residents. Would that be, what would the return on investment be for that? Abby?
Just was going to give you a heads up that Daphne and I had also recently met, I think last week, with Way Forward, and we had an idea that maybe the Workforce Housing Committee would want to hold a meeting at Way Forward so that we would all be there and be able to do a tour, and maybe we would also notice a quorum of the council and the CDA in case those committees wanted to walk through and understand more about what Way Forward is doing, and primarily in the housing space, but just in general, it'd be good for people who haven't been out to see the clothing closet or the food pantry. That would give them an opportunity to do that as well.
I think that's a good idea, because I've described Way Forward as, one of my council colleagues a while ago questioned, why would we spend our ARPA dollars on a nonprofit? It's like, if we open the door for one, wouldn't we have to open the door for many others? And I was like, this is not, they're not like any other nonprofit in Middleton. They're the closest thing we have, except for the senior center for seniors. It's the closest thing we have to a social service organization. And actually, at that time, even the director of the senior center was saying, no, we should invest in Way Forward's housing program. Instead of the senior centers, we had a little more money to spend. And she recommended we go with Way Forward's housing program because they could reach more people, not just seniors, people who are, I think you have to be 60 or up for those programs. So I like that idea. I wonder if we were to do that, though, Ben and Quinn, you don't work from home, correct? Would that be difficult to meet? Maybe have our next meeting at Way Forward?
Well, I do work from home,
Okay.
some of the week, but that's possible. Yeah. If we're
And I
talking about
think
this
she
subcommittee,
was targeting actually the Monday, June 16th at 5:30, the standard date for the Workforce Housing Committee, the
Oh,
full
okay.
committee, not the subcommittee. But
Got it.
and whatever you think would make sense is good with us.
Yeah, that would probably be better for people who work. Okay. All right, so our next subcommittee meeting will still be on the 10th, but then the following Monday, we would have our Workforce Housing Committee meeting in person at the Way Forward Resources, and extend an invitation to council members to attend.
Yeah, I think that's what we were thinking. And then also extend the invitation to the CDA as well. And we looked at the space, and it would actually be in the back building where the food pantry is located. And I think that we have enough where we could pull tables and then also accommodate members of the public, because it would be a public meeting as well.
Okay, I like that idea. All right. Okay, so thinking ahead to next time, I'll share these 5 questions now because I'll add evaluation. And then it looks like Abby and Daphne and I have some resources to share to get out to everybody as soon as possible. The updated or the most recent housing affordability report and most recent housing needs assessment for the city would be good. And that housing ready checklist with Daphne's notes in it. I think the notes are visible if you click on them. And then you'll find the More Housing Wisconsin papers and videos on it's a link to the page where they've got the papers and the videos. Those are the ones developed by the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, working with the Realty Association and also the home builders. So it's a good resource and good place to start. And then next time we'll decide on chair and vice chair. And I anticipate, just a heads up, I anticipate we'll be doing work individually between meetings, like the reading, maybe even some writing up of sections for other members to bounce ideas. My brain works in a way that I just find it a lot easier to react to something that's in writing in front of me. That's just how I work. I'm not sure how others work, but we'll try to accommodate all styles. Anything else you all want to discuss today? No?
Lisa, I think you'd laid out, I think in the last meeting too, you laid out some sort of like a little bit of a high level timeline, right?
Yes.
Even just putting that in the Miro board and then kind of what that means from what's the timeline for the 2 subcommittees? Because there's definitely, they definitely need to be interconnected, of course, right? Because especially if subcommittees having a direct interaction with the developer and they're going to ask questions about the what, and if we haven't figured out the what yet, they can't answer, it's tough to answer, right?
Yep.
So
Okay.
those things.
Okay, I'm making note. Abby, did you attend the other subcommittees meeting yesterday?
I was not able to attend, but I got a report from Daphne, and they identified their 3 primary audiences, which is business, general public, and housing developers. And they would like their deliverable to be a communications plan tied to the affordable housing extension. And they also identified the same issue that Ben Roden just identified, which is a lot of their work can't happen until they know what it is that they're communicating.
Okay, that sounds good. Did they elect a chair?
Um, they did. It's Alan Hickel for chair, and then the vice chair is Carrie Laurie.
That's great. Good for Alan. All right, and do think about for next time if you all want to be chairing or vice chairing this subcommittee. It's a good opportunity, and I have no claim on, on anything. I'm happy to assist anyone else who would like to step up and run the show. That would be fine with me. I'm happy to work behind the scenes. So okay, all right. Anything else? If not, thank you for being here. Have a good rest of your day, and I'll see many of you soon at a meeting. All right, bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.